Good grief. I had forgotten just how many figures Toy Biz made from the original Fantastic Four movies. And I mean, these things were incredible. They were designed right at the height of Toy Biz's creative powers.
It's Slinky, the favorite of girls and boys.
Hey y'all, welcome back to Carbon Scoring, the best place for comics, history, and action figures. The Fantastic Four have taken the world by storm, but it wasn't the easiest road to movie superstardom. Let's go through the entire history of Fantastic Four movie action figures, from the good, the bad, to the ugly. And while we didn't get toys of Roger Corman's 1994 FF movie, Toy Biz produced 6 waves of figures from the Fantastic Four's 2005 big budget debut. Okay, can we start out by just paying our proper respects to Toy Biz and what they attempted with their first series Mr. Fantastic figure? By my count, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 extension pieces on this figure. And granted, they don't hold together anymore. This rubbery plastic has long since devolved over the 20 years. But from a toy standpoint, you are never going to see as aggressive, as ambitious an attempt at Mr. Fantastic again. It really is just remarkable. And of course, you can take all the rubbery extensions off and you have like regular plastic pieces that you can use. So you can get this guy into a relatively normal shape, but it's all about the wacky, zany stretch of this thing. And it did it phenomenally. Toy Biz's second attempt at a Mr. Fantastic figure was no slouch either. You could remove the gloved hands and add on 2 special attachments. And not only were they attachments, the attachments had play features. The saw hand actually spins. It's got a little rotator right here, and you can get the saw to spin. But even more fun than that, the fist hand actually has a bopper on it. So you push the little button right on the arm, and this thing comes down and does the little bunny foo-foo bopping on the head. Really nice. But those are not what makes this figure special. No. Pop off the normal head and put on the alternative. Let's see if it'll fit. Flat head. Oh my gosh, that is real. That actually came with the toy. That is a flat Stanley, go underneath the door, Reed Richards head that came with this Series 2 figure. They had clearly used up all of their ideas by the final series because that is when Slinky Reed happened. Yes, here he is, Reed Richards, with a giant slinky body. I bet you could probably take some of the older pieces off and put those on here if you wanted to add. He does have kind of a pretty good head sculpt, which is new compared to the old ones. But of course, the play feature with the string inside to keep it from falling completely apart is just such old school goodness. I believe the first series Invisible Woman had 3 different variants. I obviously have the translucent variant, but I think she came in a fully painted variant and like a half painted variant. Now, Toy Biz back in the day was famous for their almost impossible to find variant figures. I'm assuming this was the easiest one to find because that's the one that I have. They also were so dedicated to super articulation. You know, Sue has fingers that articulate, wrist, and unfortunately, it kind of disrupts the sculpt. You can see all of the different mechanisms inside her body, but it actually makes for a really good translucent figure. And if you look up close, the likeness to Jessica Alba is actually quite good. So this is one of our best early translucent Invisible Woman figures in the 6-inch scale. And I used this in my comic display for a long time. The next version has far less articulation. It's really more of kind of a 5'7" POA with no ball joints at the hips or at the shoulders, but it has a remarkable paint app. These legs are cast in that same translucent plastic, but you can see they did the gradation effect on the paint so that it appears that her leg is becoming invisible up above the knee, and then from the knee down, it's fully invisible. Same thing with the arms. These arms are made from that translucent plastic, but they've gradiated out the paint.
It's a really solid Jessica Alba head sculpt, and there's some kind of play feature. Maybe you squirt water in there. It looks like it maybe comes out of the top of her head. I don't remember this at all. I was obviously getting these for display and not for play, but for a second Invisible Woman, this is pretty good. This Ben Grimm figure is a true work of art. Look at how great that sculpted detail is, the paint wash. And remember, this is long before digital printing made those eyes look so realistic. But you get that rocky texture is so well brought out. It's just absolutely amazing. Nice details like the four on his boots are really tightly painted in. But this is a figure that kids are designed to have an incredible time with. And he actually has two different action features. First off, if you hit clobbering time with his hand, it's got a mechanism where you hear that crunching sound. And the same thing happens down at his boot. So cool. And the fact that 20 years later, these batteries still work. Hey, baby, it's clobbering time with this thing. I do have a couple of the other versions of the thing that came out in this movie line. You can see this later series one doesn't have anywhere near the level of sculpted detail. And I think that's because they probably focused on the action feature here. If you push the button on his back, he slams his fist down, which, I mean, if you're a kid, that's actually really, really cool, but definitely a lesser version of the thing. However, this is one of the better figures in the line. Of course, that first FF movie told the origin story of the Fantastic Four going into space, and this incredible, super detailed, huge flight suit that Ben Grimm is in is just, it's a really, really awesome looking figure. This looks like something that you would almost see out of Mythic Legions or Cosmic Legions. But again, it's got a play feature, and if you push the button on the back, Ben Grimm transforms from his Michael Chiklis bald head into the Thing. Look at how cool that is. Just with a push of a button, you get the transformation directly from the movie. Such an awesome piece. Johnny Storm also got some seriously cool figures in this line. Ones that, in some ways, I don't think have been topped by either Toy Biz or Hasbro since. And that starts with the Series 1 Torch figure. I love the translucent orange plastic, but what really stands out is the way these fire effects curl all the way around his body. They're like soft plastic, so they don't interfere with the highly, highly detailed articulation scheme. And you can get him into some pretty decent flying poses. But you don't even have to worry about that because he came with a base. And the base used to make noise. I think it said flame on, but there's electrodes right here that when you strapped him into the base, it would talk and say flame on. So unfortunately, that battery no longer works, but that's still a really good looking flight stand. But remarkably, something that does work, there's a second button on Johnny's back and he still lights up. Yes, you can get the actual flame effect on this figure with a light up button on the back. How sweet is that? These figures are so much fun. Johnny's second figure was a relatively plain Marvel Legends figure. It almost looks more thin, like some of the Spider Man classics or that early Marvel Legends Human Torch figure. I think that the big thing with this was it had like a play feature, like weapon that shot flames or something like that. But the figure itself is actually really clean and really, really good. But it was one of the later figures that I thought was the standout Johnny Storm. And that is this partial flame on figure. That's actually a pretty decent representation of a young Chris Evans. And this is before face scanning technology. This figure also would light up if you pushed that button. All of these translucent bits would light up. But you can see that he's pretty pre-posed, that he doesn't really have a ton of articulation. And that's because he came with this incredible base. And Toy Biz was known for doing these super, super detailed bases. And you can see that this mailbox is melting, and you simply insert the Johnny figure into that, and it looks like he's about to like take off from the street level. It probably shoots out. I can't quite figure out how to get it to work, but either way, this is the kind of toy that a kid would absolutely love in 2005. I honestly think it was the characterization of Doom that really sunk those first FF movies. This was, I think, the first version of Doom, and it's a pretty solid, just basic action figure. I wish he had ball shoulders here, but he actually does have a fair amount of articulation everywhere else. This one also came with a light up action that would cause his like electric blast to come out, which I guess made him more like the Emperor than it did actually Doctor Doom. There's a pretty decent facial sculpt underneath, but overall, this is as underwhelming as the character was in the movie. And it gets worse because the next version, while he does have some help me sort of effect, has like his skin peeling off so that you can sort of see the damage to his face underneath. It did come with a separate mask that you can put on, but it looks like it's like way too huge for this character. I suppose the fact that it came with like a stoplight accessory might make some figure posers happy, but this thing is a pretty sad representation of Doctor Doom. By the time the second FF movie, Rise of the Silver Surfer, hit theaters in 2007, the world was about to be gripped by the Great Recession. And what that meant was a shrinking down of 6-inch figures down to more of a 5-inch scale, the loss of all of the electronic and super fun play features, and just a general drop in quality altogether. I don't even know that I have a Sue from this line. Oh, I found my Sue. She's kind of terrible too, but I actually do like the flame off version of Johnny. Now, somehow they actually made Doctor Doom worse for the second film, which I wasn't sure that that was even possible, but they did give us a brand new character in Norin Rad's Silver Surfer. Now, again, this is probably one of the better of these figures, if only because he does have ball shoulders and ball hips, which allows him to at least look sort of decent on his surfboard. So it's not a bad figure. It would have been great if the chrome were a little bit shinier, but it's not terrible. But overall, it was a sad ending to 2005, and it only got worse from there.
You know things are bad when your movie ends on a cliffhanger and the sequel gets canceled, then gets rebooted, and they don't even bother to make action figures. But all was forgiven with 2025's retro futuristic restart. Let's go through each of the figures while also doing a spoiler free movie review. And if you're enjoying the video, give it a like and subscribe to Carbon Scoring because we're bringing you quality content like this every week.
Okay, before we even start opening these things up, can we take a moment to appreciate just how gorgeous this package design is? I think there's something about the white that really makes everything pop off of it, but the little touches, like the old school Marvel logo, the very kind of 60s Fantastic Four, and of course going back to the original like Hasbro logo from the 60s really makes everything come together. The artwork on the side is terrific, and if you're an inbox collector, these things line up so incredibly well. But all of that still doesn't really explain why they look so good. I think I finally figured it out. It's the color behind the figures. That light blue, that design back there really kind of lets the figure kind of bounce off a little bit, and it just creates the whole package. So it's a subtle thing. I mean, it's easy to point out these details, but I actually think the thing that really makes this package pop is the color in the back and the way that it brings the figure forward. So, with that said, let's crack open Mr. Fantastic. I don't know if you've been alive for the past couple of years, but if you have seen Pedro Pascal in something, whether it be The Mandalorian or The Last of Us or Gladiator. The guy has been just about everywhere. And really, that was one of my concerns about him playing Mr. Fantastic was when he comes on screen, am I going to see Mr. Fantastic? Am I going to see Reed Richards? Or am I going to see Pedro Pascal, the actor that I know from all of these other things? And thankfully, within just a couple of lines of dialogue, all of my fears were relieved. And I guess this is why he's considered such a great actor. He was automatically a different person. He was not the Mandalorian or any of these other characters. He was Reed Richards. There was a difference about his mannerisms, his speech pattern. It was just really good acting, and it allowed him to inhabit the character of Reed Richards, who is not necessarily kind of the nutty professor or like the bumbling professor, but he is somebody who sometimes is so focused on the big picture that he misses the little things. And I thought that that really came through in the characterization. Now, this figure has that perfect new retro futuristic FF uniform. It's almost like a turtleneck with the ribbing, which really brings that classic like Jack Kirby styling. But then I love the white gloves and boots because they just really pop. The little accessories like the watch are so nice and that great FF logo. And of course, we're going to talk about this with each of them. Really strong work on the face print. I mean, you definitely can get the version of Pedro Pascal that was in this movie. So, as a general figure, as just a standing here guy, really great. Love the way the colors are screen accurate. Super, super good. But this is one where the accessories really make the man. Now, I'm sure we would all love to see the full effect with like an elongated torso, a popped off neck, longer legs. But when you come right down to it, the ones that you really have to have are the stretchy arms. And of course, these have a nice tight bendy wire in them. So they will get into and hold position pretty well. Good ball joint here so that you can get them all over the place. If I have one complaint, there's no movement at the wrist. This is sculpted all the way through. It's the same bendy plastic. So you can't switch out the hands. There's no alternating of the hands. So you're just stuck with the ones that we got. But overall, Mr. Fantastic is all about those big, stretchy arms. And I think that this accomplishes it really well. If Michael Chiklis was playing like the gruff, fully Jack Kirby inspired version of the thing, then Eben Moss Backrack really did try to bring maybe a little bit more depth to the personality of Ben Grimm. If there's one complaint about that I have about the film, I would have really liked to see the thing get a little bit more screen time. You know, you got to see him interacting with the family. There's a great little scene of him and Johnny kind of, going teasing at each other, but without it, going into just, crazy comedy. You get to see him spend a little bit of time on Yancey Street. And that's when you pick up on some of the vibes of, he's kind of trapped in this monster's body. You get to see him be a really great and loyal friend to Reed. So they're there. The scenes are there. They touch on kind of all of the different aspects of the thing. The fact that there are times when he likes to be the big rock monster center of attention. The fact that he and Johnny do have this playful relationship. The fact that he is Reed's best friend, but also that he's remorseful, that he knows that he's not going to have the same kind of life that he would if he weren't turned into a giant orange rock monster. And that really came out. I think that Moss Backrack did a great job of bringing that out. I just want more. And I'm sure we'll get more. I'm sure that we'll have more of these movies. As far as this figure goes, holy cow, look at how good this thing is. This thing is. I knew it. I said it. But they made the choice to go not with the shirted look, which was seen in a lot of the movie. And I kind of like the full pants because when you put him with the other members of the team, they actually do look like a team. It helps to bring it all together. But by going without the shirt, we get this terrifically sculpted rock look with a little bit of extra paint apps than what we saw on some of the other figures. Plus, this head sculpt, not only do I feel like it really captures the comic look of Ben Grimm, but it really hits sort of that melancholy look of the movie thing. So nice combination. Would have loved to have gotten a second head sculpt, but I have a feeling we'll get more figures that hopefully will be cross compatible, that we can switch the heads back and forth. You do get two sets of hands. He has his wrist communicator. So again, nice consistency across the line. Overall, this is a really good figure. You know that this one probably cost more per piece than any of the other ones in the line. And if they're going to spend a little extra money on somebody, I'm glad they did it on Benji here. Flame on with the Human Torch. Although we're going to start with the flame off version first. It's really super easy for the Fantastic Four just to fall into stereotypes or classic archetypes. Reed is the nerd, and Susie is the mom, and Ben is the misunderstood monster, and Johnny is the immature hothead. And honestly, I'm not going to lie, that was pretty much what Stan Lee wrote for the, first 30 or so issues of the book. But as Jack Kirby's plotting became more and more complex, you started to see much more development of the characters. And I'm super glad that that carried over into First Steps. Sure, Johnny's a little bit younger. He's got a little bit more of that, pizzazz than some of the other characters, but they didn't make him just a one dimensional male blonde. They really gave us more to his character. And he had his own plot line where his depth and his value to the team was clear and was added. And I appreciated that. I thought it made the movie better, but it didn't do it in a way that took away from the core essence of who Johnny Storm really is. Now, out of all of the FF's costumes designs, I think I like Johnny's the best, which, if you think about it, is pretty strange coming from me because you guys know what a traditionalist I am when it comes to costumes. And Johnny's with the white kind of going down, the piping, the sleeves, and everything is probably the least traditional out of all of them. But I just really think it works. You've still got the turtleneck look, you've got the ribbing, the cloth look of the costumes, the fact that these are pants and not like skin tight, Lululemons. It just really does work so well. And I'm glad that here in this first series, we got a flame off version of Johnny because I think he looks so good with his teammates. And this facial sculpt, it's got some personality. One of my complaints about some of previous Hasbro Marvel Legends figures is that the figures are just so bland. But that's not the case here. He's got a little bit of zip to him, but it's not overdone, which I think actually comes directly back to the portrayal in the movie. But come on, guys, this is the Human Torch. Give the people what they want. And what they want is a flame on version of Johnny Storm. And I must say, this one does not disappoint. Again, you've got orange, red, translucent plastic all the way around. But unlike some translucent figures where it really shows the joints and makes those incredibly obvious, this one doesn't. It's a little bit of a denser translucent plastic, but you can still see the light shines through really, really well. You do get two pairs of hands. You get like fist hands, but I really like these flying hands. And it's nice because the mechanism actually it fits right on. So I kind of tore this one off, but you can put the flames either on the hand or you can take them off like that and they come off seamlessly. So really nice that you can do that. The one thing that doesn't come off though is this flame on his back. And I think it's important. I think it kind of makes the whole effect look as the flame goes up across his back and into his hair, but it does limit the ability to get him into a really rocked back head flying pose like what I think we'd like to see. I mean, now, truthfully, that looks pretty good, right? I mean, that's pretty good, but just a little bit more bend would probably help. And I think you could probably have had these come kissing up over his shoulders a little bit more without restricting the motion as much. Nice effect down here. Even though the flame is on his feet and around his ankles, it doesn't inhibit the full bend of the toes or the toes and the ankles. So that's actually really nice. And one thing that I really want to comment on is the piping of their ribbed sweaters really matches the artwork of Jack Kirby and John Byrne, who I consider to be the most classic FF artist. They always drew Johnny with like little black lines to represent his flame on effect. And here it's the ribbing of the costume that brings that out without it being forced. So it looks really good in the movie, but it looks arguably even better on this action figure, which I think is incredibly well done. Now it's time for the surprising hit of the line, Shala Ball, the Silver Surfer. I was lucky and I got to go see the Fantastic Four while I was out at San Diego Comic-Con on premiere night. And I went with several of my friends who are pretty famous YouTubers. And I'm not going to tell you who it was because they're more famous than I am. And that would sound like name dropping. But we all kind of got into a little bit of a debate before the movie about Shala Ball and her inclusion as the Silver Surfer instead of the classic Norrin Rad. And there was some concern that this was more examples, or at least an example, of Marvel just being woke and forcing characters down our throat. Now, I personally don't think that that really is something that Marvel does nearly as much as people like to complain about it, but it is a character that's a legacy character, and you wanted the gender change to actually make sense. Now, I made the point before the movie that if this is a Fantastic Four movie, then the Silver Surfer really should be just a plot device and not like a major character all on her own. And thankfully, that was really what happened. And it turns out, once the movie started, I never once thought about the fact that Shala Ball as a female Silver Surfer was in some way taking over for Norrin Rad. In fact, in order for her plot line to really work and for her interaction with the other characters to work, it was better that she was a female. But her gender had absolutely nothing to do with the story because she, much like Galactus, is more of a force of nature than she really is a true character. Now, that being said, this figure is gorgeous. The flat silver really, really works. And what it does is it allows for those eyes, that digital eye printing to really stand out. I mean, that face is one of the best ones. I mean, it is really haunting. And the way that her hair is slicked back, it is super awesome. So, just as a figure, this is a great figure. As a character, she was a plenty fine character and one that was not in any way disruptive of the film. But when you throw this figure along with the accessories that came with it, now you have something else entirely. We do not have a male Silver Surfer that can do the things that this Shala Ball figure can do. She looks so good on this surfboard and can get into so many super crunched athletic poses. And a lot of it comes down to these ankle joints. The fact that those ankles can go all the way, both directions, really allows for you to get her posed on the board so well. Let me see if I can get another cool pose going. Yeah, I mean, Kelly Slater eats your heart out. I mean, she can totally crunch all over this board. And then when you add this base effect that has her in a launching position, yeah, from a toy standpoint, this is far and away the best figure in the line. And now the character that they absolutely had to get right, and they did, Sue Storm, the Invisible Woman. If you had to ask me whose story was told in Fantastic Four First Steps, I would say definitively it was Sue's. She is the character that undergoes the most change in the movie. She is the character that most directly faces the main conflict of the movie. And when it all comes down to it, she is the one that really propels the action of the movie. And you know what? She's really the glue that holds the whole thing together. Not just the movie, but the family of the Fantastic Four. And as somebody who has been a huge FF fan since John Byrne's run in the early 80s, I think that that is actually spot on. Now, Stan Lee kind of had Sue as just sort of a damsel in distress, but as times changed, she became really, well, one, she's the physically most powerful member of the Fantastic Four. Her power set dwarfs anybody else's, but she's also the emotional heart and leader of the FF. And that really came through in Vanessa Kirby's portrayal of Sue. I thought it was actually brilliant. Not only that, this costume is the most classic compared to the books. You've got the top of the turtleneck that just kind of has the white up around the shoulders, then with the gloves and the boots and the classic styling. So this is really kind of right off the pages of John Byrne's look for the character, and I absolutely love that. Now, the head sculpt, the look of this face is arguably the weakest out of all of them. This probably looks the least like the actor portraying the role of any of the ones. And it's tough, man. Women's faces, even particularly the more attractive a woman is, the softer the lines on her face, the harder that is to sculpt and get the sculpted detail in. So you get a pass on that. But Sue as a character was absolutely terrific in FF and was really the leader. And I had a theory, I was wrong, but I had a theory. When the movie opens, it's revealed that the universe that the Fantastic Four are in is Marvel Universe 828. And in the traditional naming of the Marvel Universe, that would have meant that that universe was created in August 8 of 1982. So it'd be 828. So right as the credits began to roll, I looked up what Fantastic Four book came out during August of 1982. And it is a Sue solo story that really ties into a lot of the themes of this movie. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I figured it out. That was the reference for it. And then as the credits roll, they actually give the real reason why the universe is 828. But I think there's a double meaning. I'm sticking with my theory on that. Now, Sue as a single figure is pretty cool, but she does have a pretty dope accessory that she came with. I got a lot of Invisible Woman action figures. This is the best that I have seen this effect done. You can see kind of the rippling of her force shield, and you can see the bullet splashes right there on it that cause that rippling. She can hold it directly out because it simply pegs in nice and tight to a hole in her palm on the alternate hand holding that hand up. So you can use the hand without it and it still looks pretty cool. That hole doesn't really bother me very much. But the fact that it firmly pops in, it's not flying around, it's not drooping, it's right there. I actually think that's maybe the best use of power effects out of this entire line.
But enough of my thoughts. What did you think? Did you love the movie? Do you like the figures? Let me know in the comments. And as always, for the best in comics history and action figures, subscribe to Carbon Scoring.